Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here to swear in these members of the American Indian Heritage Commission. Preserving Native American heritage is so important. It's remembering history. It's important to keep that alive and show all of North Carolina that as Native American people, we are still here and our history is important. If I could have all of the commissioners who will be sworn in today to please stand. And if you would, you may raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Harvey Lord,
do solemnly and sincerely swear.
Do solemnly and sincerely swear
that I will support the Constitution.
That I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance.
To the state of North Carolina.
To the state of North Carolina.
And to the constitutional powers and authorities.
And to the constitutional powers and authorities.
Which are or may be established.
Which are or may be established.
For the government thereof.
For the government thereof.
That I will endeavor to support.
That I will endeavor to support.
Maintain and defend.
Maintain and defend.
The Constitution.
The Constitution.
And laws of said state.
And laws of said state.
Not inconsistent with.
Not inconsistent with.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
To the best of my knowledge and ability.
To the best of my knowledge and ability.
And that I will faithfully discharge.
And I will faithfully discharge.
The duties of my office.
The duties of my office.
As a member.
As a member.
Of the American Indian Heritage Commission.
Of the American Indian Heritage Commission.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you.
So commissioners, if you could print your name in that space and then sign it, we'll get that to Judge McIntyre.
You all ready for me to start? All right, great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Reed Wilson. I'm Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. But before we start this meeting, I think all of you know, or most of you have heard, that in Raleigh yesterday there was a terrible tragedy. 5 people were inexplicably, needlessly, violently murdered in Raleigh. And our hearts, thoughts, prayers go out to their families and survivors. And I would just like everyone to have a moment of silence as we honor those people and their families. Thank you. All right, to the exciting reason we are here today. We are so thrilled to welcome all of you to the inaugural meeting of the North Carolina American Indian Heritage Commission. As you saw, the commissioners were just sworn in. Congratulations to all of you. And I would like to remind everyone this is a public meeting being live streamed. Just important for everyone to keep that in mind. A few words about our department before we get to the substance of today. We take care of the things that people love about our wonderful state, literally from A to Z. We have art museums and we have the zoo and so many other things. Parks, aquariums, historic sites, history museums, the African American Heritage Commission, the symphony, the library, the archives, historic sites. The list goes on. And I think what's important about all these places and the ideas they represent is they help bring us together as North Carolinians. They create common ground, and everybody is welcome at the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. We are so thrilled that this new commission is part of our department. And this commission was created in the budget last year, passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Cooper. And the commission's charge is to advise and assist our department in the preservation, interpretation, and promotion of American Indian history, arts, customs, and culture. And this summer, we hired our 2 staff people for this commission. Kerry Bird is the director, right there. You'll hear from him. And Quinn Godwin is the associate director. You will also hear from him. And they're doing a great job, and we're thrilled they're with us. As secretary, one of my top priorities for this department is making sure that we tell more inclusive, accurate, and representative stories about the people and history of North Carolina, a long and rich history that began with American Indians. And I'm challenging our department to promote diversity and inclusion in every way we can, including preserving and interpreting history that might have been previously overlooked, inaccurately portrayed, or purposely ignored. And some of this history is difficult, painful, shameful. It is no secret that American Indians have been mistreated, discriminated against, killed. And yet, American Indian history includes powerful stories of resilience, tenacity, persistence, resourcefulness, and community. So in addition to history, this commission will also celebrate today's American Indian culture. And I can tell you, after recent visits to Cherokee mounds near to tribal mounds near Cherokee and the intertribal powwow last weekend at Dick's, American Indian culture is rich, vibrant, and vital. So this commission will help ensure that state-supported sites and resources preserve and promote American history and culture. And we will figure out many ways for our department to interact with tribal communities around the state. And I want to thank everyone who has helped create the commission, and I want to thank all of you in advance for the hard work you will devote to this effort. There's so much that we will be working on together, and I really appreciate your commitment to this effort. You know, earlier this week, we started off celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, and I can't think of a more appropriate way to end the work week than with this inaugural meeting. We will now open with a couple blessings and then hear from Governor Roy Cooper after that. So, I don't know how the blessings are happening, but it's time for that. Thank you.
Now we'll have Marty Richardson give us a welcome in the Tulalip language, representing the Halawasaponi tribe.
Nahan pipi, Dr. Marty Richardson Minkila Kanase, me Halawasaponi isa, Halastu North Carolina, Watiwa, Shahuntakot Watiwa, Okahoki sa ni Wonspe, Biwa, Okahoki sa ni. My name is Dr. Marty Richardson. I serve as Vice Chief of the Halawasaponi Indian Tribe and now the American Indian Heritage Commission. And I'm really proud of that. I never thought as a young person growing up in this circle that I'd be in these positions, but I'm very proud. I'm happy to be here and ready to move forward working with all the people, all the tribes in North Carolina on very important topics. And the commissioner he mentioned some things that are really important to our people, the resilience, but also some of the things that have been done to our people. And we're still putting the pieces back together. And so it's really good that we're here together and that we're working on these topics. And thank you for everyone who had a part in elevating our issues and the things that are important to us to this level. I'm going to ask my brother here, Sandy Jacobs, to come up, and we're going to sing an honor song in honor of all of our ancestors and all of the people, all of our over 100,000 Native people in this state. Thank you.
could welcome Greg Jacobs to give us a blessing this morning as well.
Let us pray. Yeah, Father, what a wonderful occasion you have provided us here with. And displaying our native culture, we feel you, Creator, here. You filled this room with joy and the spirit of ancestors, and it was all good, the spirit of integrity and love and respect for one another. Father, we ask you to bless this undertaking today, that our lips will speak truth, and all the hearts here will feel that truth, and that you may allow us the opportunity to share that truth about indigenous people with all the world. Dear God, I pray for the sick and afflicted everywhere, those who suffer the grief, the families that lost loved ones yesterday. Dear God, I ask you to bless that. I ask you to bless where I failed to ask. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
I want to thank my colleague, Secretary Pam Cashwell of Department of Administration, for being here, and also Greg Richardson, Director of the Commission of Indian Affairs. But now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the Governor of the great state of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Governor.
Thank you so much, everybody. And Reed, I'm grateful for the moment of silence this morning. I'm grateful for first responders and law enforcement officers from local, state, and federal level who took on a complex mission and were able to stop a very dangerous shooter who had terrorized the Raleigh community and had killed 5 people. This morning we are sad and angry and have a lot of questions that will be answered over the next few days. But there is a core truth that we already know. No parent, no child, no community, no one should live in fear of gun violence. And policymakers cannot, should not turn away and forget what happened here in Raleigh and what has happened across this country. But today, we're also here for the beginning of a journey and a celebration with leaders across this state of American Indian tribes that we're so proud of here in North Carolina. Curry and Quinn, I know you're going to do a great job staffing this effort. Took Quinn away from me, but hey, you know, that's what we have to do. Glad to have Greg Richardson with us this morning. Reed Wilson, thank you so much for your strong leadership of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. Glad to have Lumbee Tribe member and Representative Charles Graham with us this morning, who's also running for Congress, and so many other friends that I see in the audience. I'm grateful to be here with you. I'm excited about this because real stories need to be told. Already, there are many artistic, literary, dance, music celebrations that go on throughout our state, put on by the great work of individual tribes. But I see this commission pulling it all together and being able to tell a broader and wider story about the rich culture and the history and true facts and keeping things alive and appreciated for generations to come. One thing I know firsthand is that American Indians have played a vital role in this state for many years, and particularly since I have been governor. I have appointed 85 American Indians to important boards and commissions throughout our state. Including District Court Judge Brooke Clark in Robeson County, and of course, our Secretary of the Department of Administration, Pam Cashwell, who is the first American Indian woman to serve in a governor's cabinet. It's why I've declared in North Carolina, as soon as I became governor, the second Monday in the month of October, Indigenous People Day. And we just celebrated it this week. It's why I proclaim every month of November as American Indian Heritage Month. And it's why we proclaim May 5th every year as Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. And next month, our PAGE program at the Capitol and the Governor's Mansion will host American Indian Future Leaders. And we're grateful for that effort. One thing that I have known for a long time, but has become even more apparent to me as I serve in this job, diversity is our strength. We have to recognize, honor that diversity, and use it for good. Results are better when there's more diversity at the table. When we have more points of view from different kinds of people, different races, different walks of life, different economic status, different geography, different gender, we get a better product at the end of the day. I've appointed by far the most diverse cabinet and staff in the history of this state. I believe it is the best, and I believe that diversity has contributed to it being the best. We have about 130,000 American Indians living in North Carolina, and I am proud of that. And so many contributions are being made by people in our tribes across North Carolina. We're going to look to you to lead us in how we make sure that we keep the heritage alive, that we do it in a way that's entertaining, that captures people's attention, that allows people of all kinds to become a part of it and to feel a part of it. And I know you will. And I'm so excited about the work ahead and excited to be a part of this commission and look forward to great, great days ahead. And now I want to introduce to you a person who's one of the hardest working, smartest people I know, who is taking on a tough job as head of the Department of Administration, which is responsible for nuts and bolts of all of state government, is constantly challenging, but she meets it every single day. Our Secretary of the Department of Administration, Pam Cashwell. Pam?
Thank you, Governor Cooper. It is great to be here this morning with you all. This has been a long time coming, I feel like. We've been working on this for a long time. Representative Graham, thank you for being here, and thank you for all your hard work also to make this happen. I want to say I wanted to wait until the governor left, so it was clear that I'm not saying this because he's in the room. But there is no question, you heard some of the things that Governor Cooper just said, that has happened under his watch in terms of the number of American Indians who have been appointed to boards across this state. All the other things that he mentioned, I won't go through it again, but there is no question that we currently have the single most supportive governor of American Indian people that we've ever had in the state of North Carolina. No question about it. He has put his money where his mouth is. He's pushed for funding for American Indian communities, and there's so many things that I could go through a long list, but I'm really grateful for that, and I think it is important that we ensure that our communities are aware of that, because it's really important. Getting our representatives on state boards and commissions is huge. We don't have a voice if we're not at the table. And the more than 400 boards and commissions across North Carolina make a lot of policy in various areas across this state. So we've got to be at those tables. Okay. So, Secretary Reed Wilson, thank you so much. We are in a great place also because as Secretary of the Department of Administration, among other things, I have the Commission of Indian Affairs under my purview. And I am blessed to have a great partnership with Secretary Wilson. And so I'm really excited because having the Commission of Indian Affairs under my purview and this new commission under Secretary Wilson with the leadership of Kerry Bird and Quinn Godwin, who are going to be amazing. I'm so excited to have them at the helm of this commission. We're going to be able to get a lot of work done. And I view this commission working hand in hand with the Commission of Indian Affairs. It's a force multiplier. And so it's just amazing because it gives us yet another opportunity to impact American Indians in North Carolina and make an impact across our state. So I look really forward to working with all of you. This is a great group of people. We're really blessed to have so many experts and professionals in their fields on this particular commission. I'm grateful to have Greg Richardson at the helm of our Commission of Indian Affairs, and I know he's going to be speaking, but most importantly, I just want you all to know that you have the support of the Department of Administration and that we will do anything that we can to help you all be immensely successful. Thank you for allowing me to be here today with you.
Okay, Greg. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the Director of the Commission of Indian Affairs, Greg Richardson. Come on up.
Good morning, Secretary Reed and Representative Charles Graham and Chief, Vice Chief, council members as present, Chair of the Occoneechee, Chair of the Saponi. And when I walked in this building today and thinking about the meeting today, this morning, my mind went back to many years ago when I first came to work with the Commission of Indian Affairs. And that door right there and up here on this stage was a meeting of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. And in this meeting, certain things were taking place. I want to give you a little information about what was going on in 1971. That was when the Commission of Indian Affairs was started. So the meeting I'm going to refer to, though, was not the meeting that was occurring in this room, but there were some dynamic things going on. And so I wanted to take this opportunity, of course, to congratulate the new commission members of the Indian Heritage Commission. There's some great opportunities that's going to take place because of this work. But in North Carolina, we have some strategic things that go on that make things happen that I think is very, very important. And at the Commission of Indian Affairs, we have something called an Indian Legislative Agenda. And the Indian Heritage Commission was on last year's Indian Legislative Agenda. That agenda was passed off to Representative Charles Graham from Tony Hayes, Chair of our Legislative Committee of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. So strategically, in North Carolina, we're getting some things done because we're getting some things in writing in law. So that's way above policy. That's way above operating procedures and other policies, but it becomes law. So now it is in North Carolina, we have another commission, the North Carolina Indian Heritage Commission, which gives us a sound footing for creating some other legislation perhaps that will bring forth some new and dynamic things for our people. We know as a people that for too long now we've been left out. We know that our history is not being taught appropriately. And we're so appreciative of the things that Governor Cooper's done and Secretary Cashwell in terms of those numbers that you heard in terms of getting people onto boards and commissions. So I would hope that through the work of our new commission that we're going to find ourselves having representatives on other boards and commissions and committees across the state that help with the process of making sure that we have roadside markers that identify historic sites in North Carolina, roadside markers that identify those old Indian schools that some of us in the room went to many years ago. That's very, very important. And then the idea that this whole effort can create travel and tourism, I can tell you, that's a big chunk of it. The public is so excited about American Indians. They want to know, and I had to learn through some experiences that because I get questions, it's not because someone is always wanting to maybe challenge or question my American Indian identity, but it's because they just don't know. That came to me in the Army when I was in the military. I had some confrontations until I grew into that and started to learn that we have to be educators. We have to help people understand the plight of our people and that we're still here, as Nadine Patrick always says in her songs. So on behalf of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs, I wanted to congratulate Secretary Reed, administration here, our new commissioners, Kerry and Quinn. You have an excellent opportunity. This is exciting, and I want you to know that the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs stands ready to support this work and the continuation of this work on into the future years. We met here many years ago, as I indicated before. Back there, I was the most afraid to come into this room. Chief Richardson happened to walk up behind me. Governor Hunt was up here at the table. Governor Hunt motioned back to Chief Richardson. He said, "Chief Richardson, you come right on up here and sit." That was a time when we didn't have an open door in many cases. So we had a great opportunity. So we're going to have more and more opportunities like that as we move forward. Congratulations again for this, what you're doing. Congratulations for the opportunity that you've got to make a difference in this state, in this nation moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. And definitely, our department and this commission look forward to working together with your commission, your department in the months and years ahead. And as Greg mentioned, this commission would not exist without legislation. And legislation doesn't get passed unless somebody introduces it. And I think we all know that Representative Charles Graham is responsible for introducing the bill that in the end created this commission. And I'm thrilled that you were here today. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce to you Representative Graham. Come on up.
Good morning. Well, let me say it's a pleasure to be here, and I think a lot has been said that I wanted to emphasize, but let me put a greater emphasis on what has been said. You have been charged to stand up for indigenous people throughout this state, to tell our story, tell the facts, tell the truth, advise, the Secretary and his staff, the Governor, and the General Assembly what they should do to promote our culture. I've had this thought in my mind for a long time. I've served in General Assembly now for 12 years. I do serve in the Democratic Caucus. I serve in the Legislative Black Caucus. And I walk those halls numerous times as a caucus of one, standing up for my beliefs and my culture and the United Tribes throughout North Carolina. And I'm honored to be standing here before you as a Lumbee and as a Waccamaw Siouan. My grandmother was Waccamaw Siouan. And as I said, I've been honored to serve in the General Assembly, and I want to thank Secretary Wilson, Secretary Cashwell, and also the Governor, Governor Cooper. And I can confirm and acknowledge what has been said, that he has stood up and promoted the culture throughout North Carolina and has been an advocate for indigenous people. But I want to say congratulations to the commission members. Many of you I know. I know you understand the needs of our communities and your desire to tell our story. But I will say this: there are some in the General Assembly who does not want our story told. And I'm sad to say that. But we must tell our story. And it's your responsibility. And I know you are excited about being able to do that and talk about and advise about the rich history of the United Tribes here in North Carolina. You are the experts. Each tribe has a unique history, and that history needs to be told. It needs to be publicized. Millions travel through this state annually, and they come to our state to spend their money. I'd like to see them spend their money in our tribal communities, because they, from my understanding and knowledge of speaking to folks throughout the years, they want to understand our culture. They want to know more about our culture. I was in Pembroke yesterday, and a group came to UNC Pembroke, and they stopped by the museum, all the way from western North Carolina, traveling, and they stopped by the museum in Pembroke. And they were there for a reason. They wanted to understand more about the Lumbee tribe and more about their tradition and our cultures. And there are millions who come through this state every year that we're not taking advantage of to promote our strong, rich cultures and heritages. This is an opportunity to take advantage of that, promoting our arts, our culture, and it's an economic enterprise. So I'm encouraging the members of the commission to push and use your voices, and I know you can. I know you can. I've had opportunity to speak to many of you on numerous occasions in the General Assembly, and you're determined, you're strong-willed, and you don't mind using your voice, and I want you to continue to do that as commission members. Don't take no for an answer. Let's talk about it, let's debate it, let's discuss it, and I know you will. Let's push our pride. Let's take advantage of the economic opportunities that we have before us. And I remember having conversations several years ago with Mr. Bruce Jones, a former commission chair. And one of the things he talked to me about was, why don't we take advantage of the tourism that we have coming into this state and promoting our culture? And as I said earlier, each tribe has a story to tell, and it needs to be told. I know they're out there, rich, exciting, and folks are thirsty to understand the American Indian culture, indigenous people. And I'm honored, and I want to thank the staff here at Cultural Resources. I want to thank the members of the General Assembly who agreed with my mission, who agreed with my thoughts about promoting our cultures, and who agreed to appropriate $500,000 towards this cause. And I'm so excited to be able to be a part of that and to bring this opportunity to our state and to our communities and to our tribal people. Not only that, to our youth who need to understand their history, our grandchildren who need to understand their history. And if it can't be taught and be factual in our books and our public education, you can do that. You have that opportunity to do that. And again, I just want to say thank you and congratulations. You have a great opportunity, and I want to thank the public for being here, and my brothers and sisters for taking this opportunity and leaving here with good thoughts that we're going to get the recognition we deserve in this state as Indigenous people. And I know you will do that. And I look forward to reading about, hearing about the quality of work you're doing, and some of the symbols that we need to promote across this state that, you know, if you get off this path and you go this direction, you can learn about the Occaneechi. You can learn about the Halawasaponi. You can get a better understanding of the Lumbee tribe. Every tribe at this table has a story to tell, and you will tell that story, and I have no doubt that you'll do that, and you will do an outstanding job getting that message out, getting people into the communities, taking advantage of the economic opportunities that stands before us. So thank you so much, and I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a privilege of mine to serve 12 terms in General Assembly, and I can't think of a better way to close my career here in Raleigh. It's been an honor, and thank you so much for taking on this responsibility. God bless you.
So I have a very hard act to follow between the governor and Secretary Caswell, Secretary Wilson, Greg, but it's my privilege to be here with you this morning and say welcome. I would first like to show respect to my ancestors, the people who have made this possible. And give honor to the elders who are here in the room and those who are watching via live stream. You are most appreciated, most respected, most admired, and we certainly want to make sure that we capture your stories so that others in the future can hear your wisdom. And I would like to say thank you to my family for their love and support that they've given me throughout my lifetime, because their support, my ancestors' support, our elders' support is what make this possible and have made this opportunity possible for me and for Quinn. My name is Kerry Bird. I am an enrolled member of the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate tribe in Sisseton, South Dakota. We live on the Lake Traverse Reservation there. My dad was, I'm actually the great-great-grandson of Chief Gabriel Renville, who was one of our former chiefs of our tribe. He was a progressive thinker, but also very involved in cultural traditions and protecting of those cultural traditions. I'm also a descendant of my mom's tribe. She was a Lumbee Indian. I was born and raised in Robeson County and grew up there, so I'm very aware of their struggles as a tribe and in that community. My parents were Kenneth and Bird and the late Glenda Revels Bird. They're now deceased, but they gave me a sense of pride and encouragement and the courage to go on and pursue my destiny. I attended the University of North Carolina at Pembroke for a couple of years before I transferred to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My parents were both high school dropouts. They were young people who fell in love and started a family. They actually went back to high school. My dad went back as a 21-year-old former soldier in Pembroke High School and graduated high school. My mom got her GED at the technical college and then got her LPN as licensed. So they encouraged us to pursue our educational opportunities. They didn't push, but they encouraged us to do well in school and be proud of our accomplishments. After I went to Chapel Hill, I attended Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, where I obtained a master's in social work and have spent the most of my years in my professional career working in Indian affairs. I had the privilege of working for Mr. Bruce Jones and also for Greg Richardson at the Commission of Indian Affairs. I'm humbled to stand here before you today as the inaugural director of the North Carolina American Indian Heritage Commission. It gives me a lot of pride to be able to serve in this capacity and to see it move forward. It was established legislatively in the 2021 General Assembly by GS 143B 135.5 and with Representative Graham's assistance. The mission of the American Indian Heritage Commission is to preserve, interpret, and promote American Indian history, arts, customs, and culture. The commission shall have the following powers and duties. The first is to assist in the coordination of American Indian cultural events. So we take the opportunity to participate in the American Indian Heritage Celebration over at the museum later next month, and also to advise the Secretary of Natural and Cultural Resources on the oversight and management of all state-managed American Indian historic sites, those of which Secretary Wilson had mentioned going to Cherokee and visiting the mounds there, Naquazi Mound and the Kadua Mound. Also to promote awareness of the annual American Indian Heritage Celebration and encourage American Indian cultural tourism throughout the state of North Carolina. We know tourism is an important aspect of our economic communities, and we know there's a lot of economic drivers that we can encourage the support of things that are already going on, but also help them to see the possibilities of things they can do in their communities to further their economic impact. Our work is governed by a 12-member commission, and they have been selected by their tribal communities and urban Indian organizations to sit on this commission and to provide their voice here today. We're excited to have them present today. We're excited to have their expertise and their professional experiences. Some are practitioners. So as you saw earlier with Sandon and Marty, when they performed their honor song, I saw J.D. Moore, who was over there participating as well. He didn't have a drum in his hand, but he had his hands, and he was mouthing the words and singing along with them. I know Chief Caldwell is here from the Meherrin community. So we have a lot of that cultural aspect that they're bringing here, and we'll be able to capitalize on their activities and their experiences by serving here on the commission. Quinn Godwin is now going to introduce our commissioners. You will hear that they come with a broad range of experiences, interest. It is going to be a working commission, and they've all been challenged with that part of their acceptance of their roles here on the commission. It's not really going to be a sit back and see what happens. They're going to be very active in the work that we do. We're hoping that they will bring further ideas for us to take forward as we look to continue to further the broad reach of the commission. We know there are a lot of needs out there, as Representative Graham was saying earlier, and Greg alluded to this as well. There's a lot of needs for us to do to protect our heritage. There's a lot to do to increase our visibility amongst the general public. And I'm always amazed at the people that I meet who don't know anything about American Indians. They don't know we still exist. They don't know what our experiences have been. I was speaking with one of the commissioners earlier, day before yesterday, and was talking about the contemporary experiences that we've had and how do we get people to understand what our contemporary experiences have been if they don't have the chance or the knowledge of what those experiences have been in our communities. So Quinn's going to come up and introduce our commissioners, and you'll get to hear more about what they're bringing to the table. So Quinn Godwin is our Associate Director. He is my right-hand man. He was attracted to the commission from the governor's office, where he was doing an outstanding job, but we're just really proud and happy to have him as a part of the commission and part of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. Quinn Godwin.
Okay, greetings, commissioners, agency staff, and guests. I'm very excited to be here today. We're finally having our first meeting. I am Quinn Godwin, Associate Director for the North Carolina Indian Heritage Commission. I am a member of the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina, and I'm supported here today by my family. I have my parents, Harvey and Sheila Godwin, and my fiancée, Gianna. So happy to have you here. First, I want to express what a true honor and privilege it is to be a part of both this historic commission and this amazing department. I want to thank both Governor Cooper and Secretary Wilson for their leadership, as well as members of the North Carolina General Assembly for bringing this idea about this commission to fruition. Today, I have the distinct honor of introducing the inaugural commissioners for the AIHC. They are an excellent group of individuals, representative of all the talent, expertise, and cultural knowledge within our North Carolina American Indian communities. I have no doubt that they will serve these communities well and add tremendous value to our commission. So I will now introduce those commissioners. Commissioners, when I call you your name, if you would, please stand up. And I will read their background, a couple of things about them that we find relevant, and let you know about their expertise. So we want to start off with the Coharie tribe, and we have Mr. Greg Jacobs. Greg is the tribal administrator for the Coharie Intra-Tribal Council Incorporated. He has a wife named Debbie Jacobs, a daughter, Renee Jacobs, and a granddaughter, Dallas Jacobs, who's getting married tomorrow. His educational background is he's a graduate of the Clinton High School, and he has continued education in both Sampson Community College as well as East Carolina University. His cultural expertise: he's a lifelong American Indian activist. He has 68 years of American Indian, Native American cultural revitalization efforts. Thank you, Mr. Greg. And she's not able to be with us today, but for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian, we have Commissioner Lynn Harlan. She is part of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian, and she's from the Big Y community of the Koala Boundary. She is currently a consultant for museums, has served as the public relations coordinator for the Eastern Band, the Cherokee Indian Hospital Authority, and Harris Cherokee Casino and Resort. Her educational background: she has a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and her cultural expertise includes historic preservation. And we would like to make a comment. She's not here due to the passing of Eastern Band of Cherokee Tribal Councilwoman Virginia Lee Tommy Bradley Sanook, and Commissioner Harlan is present at that funeral today. We offer condolences to Councilwoman Sanook's family, as well as the Eastern Band tribe. So next up, we have the Halawassaponi Indian tribe, Dr. Marvin Marty Richardson. He is Halawassaponi, and his profession is Grantee Technical Assistant at SAMHSA Native Connections Program, and he's also the Vice Chief of the Halawassaponi tribe. His wife is Melissa Silver Richardson. His daughter is Mackenzie Yant Askai Richardson. His educational background: he has a Bachelor of Arts in American Indian Studies from UNC Pembroke, an MA in Anthropology from Indiana University, an MA in History from the University of Chapel Hill, and a PhD in History from UNC Chapel Hill. He is also a founding member of the Stony Creek Singers, which is a Native drum group, and he is a language revitalist. You heard him speak early in Tutelo Saponi language, and he's a specialist in Native culture and history. Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Okay, next we have the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina, and this is Miss Nancy Strickland Fields. Nancy is Lumbee, and she is currently the museum director and curator for UNC Pembroke's Museum of the Southeast American Indian. She has a daughter, Casey, and a granddaughter, Kinley. She has a BA in Museum Studies from the Institute of American Indian Arts, a master's in history from UNCW. She's a PhD student in public history at NC State, and her cultural expertise centers around Southeastern Indigenous First Contact histories, Southeastern colonial history, Southeastern American Indian slavery, American Indian interpretation, contemporary American Indian art and Native art history, and contemporary Indigenous issues and topics. Thank you, Commissioner Fields. For the Meherrin Indian Tribe, we have Mr. Jonathan Calder. Jonathan Calder is currently the tribal chief of the Meherrin Indian Tribe. His mother is Sylvia Cottle, and his brother is Brad Cottle. Educational background includes electronics engineering technology with a minor in psychology, philosophy, and history. His cultural expertise is that he has a lot of tribal government experience. He's previously served as a council member, council chair, and now the chief. Thank you, Chief. Occaneechi Band of Saponi Nation, we have Mr. Forrest Hazel. Forrest is retired, but he's a former project director with the Occaneechi Tribe, former advisor for American Indian Program, and Guilford Technical Community College. He has a son named Thomas, a daughter named Victoria, and grandchildren Mia and Marley. He has a BA in anthropology and an MPH, both from UNC. His cultural expertise is that he has 40 years of study and research into Southeastern American Indian culture and history. Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we have Saponi Tribe, and this will be Miss Kara Stewart. Kara is a member of the Saponi Tribe and served 10 years on their tribal council. She's a former literacy coach and reading specialist. She currently is the historical researcher and archivist with the Saponi and continues to serve on Orange County Schools Equity Task Force, advising their Board of Education. She has 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren. She holds undergraduate degrees from Penn State and a graduate degree from North Carolina State. She served in tribal government. She served on the North Carolina State Advisory Council on Indian Education, which is referred to as SACE, which is a big component of the people we work with, partnership we have. And she also serves on the United Tribes of North Carolina Board. Thank you. Waccamaw Tribe, we have Mr. J.D. Moore. J.D. is a manager of nuclear site services at Duke Energy. He has a wife named Kim D. Moore, who is Lumbee, a daughter, Kara B. Moore, and son, Jacob C. Moore. He has a BS in Business Administration from Pembroke State University, which is now UNC Pembroke. And his cultural expertise that he's bringing to us is traditional customs and ceremonies, knowledge of American Indian dance, song, and tribal events. And many of you know from our community that JD is a big powwow MC. So a lot of the powwows you go to, you'll hear his voice coming out of the speakers. He's a great guy, so thank you. Next, we have the Cumberland County Association for Indian People, and our representative is Tiffany Renee Pearson, and I don't believe she was able to make it this morning. She's a member of the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina. She's a licensed clinical mental health counselor and also a licensed teacher. She taught for 5 years, in Cumberland County. She and her fiance have 2 children together, ages 3 and 3 months. And she's also the only granddaughter of Richard and Gladys Hunt. Gladys Hunt is also the executive director of Cumberland County Association for Indian People. She has a bachelor's degree in biology from UNC Pembroke, master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, and she has that with the highest distinction. Her cultural expertise, she served on SACE, the State Advisory Council for Indian Education, for 4 years. She's a member of the Alpha Pi Omega Sorority for Indigenous Women. She volunteers, she's an advocate and a team member of the Cumberland County Association for Indian People, and she's done that for over 10 years. Next, we have Guilford Native American Association, and we have Miss Jennifer Revels Baxter. Jennifer is a member of the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina. Her profession is she is a manager and family counselor at Roselawn Memorial Gardens, and also a Native arts consultant with Longhouse Productions. She has 2 grown children, Courtney and Reed Baxter Jr. Her educational background, she has a business administration degree from App State, Appalachian State University, and her cultural expertise is powwow planning, execution, Indian education, human relations, and indigenous arts. Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we have Metrolina Native American Association, and that is Miss Rebecca Jones LeClaire. Rebecca is a member of the Lumbee Tribe, and she's an entrepreneur and small business owner. She is married to Scott with children Nicholas and Molly. And she's also a 2002 graduate of UNC Pembroke School of Business, and her expertise is in marketing and event management. Thank you, Commissioner. And lastly, we have Triangle Native American Society, and we have Mr. Sandon Jacobs. Sandon is enrolled Wakamasuan, but he's also of Coharie and Lumbee ancestry. He's a senior software engineer at the SAS Institute here in Raleigh. His wife's name is Brandy, and they have 2 daughters, Kaylee and Caden. He has a BS in computer science from UNC Pembroke, and his cultural expertise is powwow planning, singing, dancing, and also emceeing all across the United States and Canada. He's a member of the planning committee for the annual Dix Park Powwow in Raleigh, which we just had last Saturday. It was a huge success. And he's one of the founding fathers of the Phi Sigma Nu Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you, sir. So I want to say thank you to all of our commissioners, and I really look forward to working closely together. I am at your service, anything you need. I'll be the logistics guy, so we'll be in communication a lot. So thank you so much.
Hello again. I'm now going to call the official portion of this meeting to order at 9:56 a.m. That can't be right. 10:56. Thank you. So we're at the part of the agenda where we elect the chair. But to elect the chair, I need to appoint an interim chair to run that process, because the statute says that the chair is elected by the members of the commission. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, but we're going to work through it, and it's going to be great. Our counsel, Karen Blum, tells me that I can, in fact, appoint an interim chair for the purpose of considering motions to elect a permanent chair for the commission. And so once that process is done and you all choose a chair, that person will chair the meeting, run the meeting. And we've run this by her, and she said it's okay. We're asking Commission Member Nancy Strickland Fields to serve as the interim chair for as many minutes as it takes for you all to elect a permanent chair. And it's important to say that this decision of who your chair is entirely up to you as a group. You all will figure that out and consider motions, a motion or more than one motion, and vote on that. And so, Commissioner Fields, I want to thank you for agreeing to serve as this interim chair. And if there are any questions about how this meeting goes forward, either that you might have or the permanent chair has, Karen Blum is here in the front row to any sort of Robert's Rules of Order stuff or anything like that. You can ask her. She will be here. So I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning. Let's get started. The first order of business is to elect our first chair. Is there anyone who would like to nominate a name for chair?
I would like to submit Commissioner Sandon Jacobs as a nomination for chair of the American Indian Heritage Commission.
Okay, very good. And would anyone like to entertain a motion to elect?
I move that we elect Mr. Sandon Jacobs as the chairman of the American Indian Heritage Commission.
Okay, and who moves?
I second.
Is there any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, it's unanimous. Congratulations.
Well, let me start off by just making a couple comments. Number one, the tremendous pride and humility I feel at the same time of being asked to, by my peers, to serve on this board, number one, and to be the leader of this board, to lead the meetings. I'm very appreciative of that. I'm not standing here alone. I'm standing on the shoulders of people I consider giants in my life. I looked at the agenda and I see things like the Indian school markers, and those Indian schools tell a lot of my origin story. And I sit here as the grandson of the late Chief Roscoe Jacobs, who attended one of those tribal schools in the 30s. And I'm humbled to serve. I look forward to this opportunity. I want to thank the secretary. I want to thank Kerry and Quinn and Representative Graham for his diligent work on getting this board started. So I'm looking forward to getting down to business and about the business of our people. So thank you. Thank you again. Been asked to read this ethics statement. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute Section 138A-15E, the chair reminds all members of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest under the State Government Ethics Act. Are there any known conflicts of interest with respect to any matters coming before the committee?
None known, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any others? Anyone else? All right. So I guess we move into the presentation, election of chair, conflict of interest recognition of our tribal Indian and urban Indian organization dignitaries. I see that we do have some folks from our tribes that are here. If we have any of our chiefs and our dignitaries, our tribal council members that are here, would you please stand real quick just so everybody knows you're here? I see Commissioner Hayes, Chief Jacobs there. Let's give them a round of applause for being here. Appreciate them coming out to support this. Next, we're going to go into the presentation of the AIHC projects. Curry, you ready?
Thank you. Yeah, it gives me a great privilege to stand before you again to talk about some of the ideas that Quinn and I have been looking at, considering, that we'd like to present to the commissioners today and to get their support so that we can move forward with some of these projects. Oops. So one is looking at our website and our logo for branding and marketing of the commission itself. So Quinn and I had the idea of looking at a beadwork pattern as our logo, and these were some of the beadwork patterns we were looking at. Unfortunately, our communications and marketing department is a little overwhelmed currently with their work projects, and so they can't really get to our project until next year, January of 2023. But these were some of the ideas that we were considering that we would like the commission to take a look, give us some feedback on, and as we go forward, we can have a general, clear idea of the wishes of the commission itself. We are establishing a website. We have a name that we're getting registered, so we'll have that name to move forward with. On the website, we're going to have not only information about the Heritage Commission, our members, bios and photographs. That's why we were having the photos taken this morning, so we could have those on our website. We're going to have tribal information, so people know with the tribes of North Carolina, the 8 tribes, the 4 urban Indian organizations. We're also going to have a Facebook page, which we currently have. I'm not sure if it's gone live yet. Quinn's handling that post for us on Facebook. We're also going to establish our social media presence with Twitter and any other means that we can continue to get the word out about the American Indian Heritage Commission. We're also going to be working on a newsletter. We haven't really talked about how often we would be able to produce the newsletter itself. That's why we were collecting names and email addresses earlier as you were walking in. If you didn't sign up on the sign-in sheet for the newsletter information, please do it as you leave today and make us aware of that. The second item is promotion of Indian Heritage Month. So we're working with the marketing and communications team on how we can strategize to better promote American Indian Heritage Month in North Carolina. We're developing a strategic plan over the next year so we can make the month of November better known that it's American Indian Heritage Month. We can have conversations with media, not only in our local market, but also in Wilmington, in Charlotte, in Greensboro, wherever there's a TV market, that we can work with those TV stations so they have more opportunities to interview our leadership, interview any of our cultural practitioners, anything that we can help get our message out and increase our visibility. Quinn and I are also going to be working with the North Carolina Museum of History, and we're going to be participating as content providers for History at High Noon in November. We will record that session over the next couple of weeks and have that available for our commissioners to view, as well as people outside of our this meeting today, but also outside of North Carolina who might want to know more about our history in North Carolina. Also, the American Indian Heritage Celebration, which goes on at the Museum of History, it's November the 19th. It's in person this year. We would encourage all of you to come out and participate in that. It's a wonderful activity where you see not only the practice of traditional arts, like some of the things that are on display today down here is our decor for our meeting, basketry, painting, artisans doing pottery, silversmith, also the practitioners of cultural arts, powwow dancing and drumming, etc. So come out, and if you have any ideas to assist us in that planning and preparation for that, we would certainly encourage your comments and your involvement. The next thing is tribal historic markers, and I see Ansley's here. She would be readily available to talk to anyone who has interest in that opportunity. We've talked with Ansley with the Historical Markers Division. They feel fairly confident that if we put applications forward on our 8 tribes, that they can get passed in the next session of their review. They have a historical marker commission that meets and reviews those applications. They have a lot of interest. They did get some additional funding in the last General Assembly round, so they have a little more money to work with, but not a lot of money to work with, but more than they've had in the past. And since they've been underrepresented in the American Indian communities with markers of any type, they feel fairly confident that they would be able to get markers, applications approved so we can get those markers in the ground sometime in 2023, and hopefully are planning to have that in the ground by November of 2023. So we'd have that to look forward to in the next year. And those markers would be based on applications that would have documented history of our tribes. So they look at things that are significant to the state's history, and that's where our tribal markers would be shown, that history and their involvement and interest and the value they brought to the state, for lack of a better term, but just their significance to the state history. The tribes would have the opportunity to decide where in their tribal communities they would like to see those markers placed. If they're in your tribal headquarters, if they're in a historic site that's in your community, if you wanted them placed in a place that would be more highly visible, that would be up to the tribes themselves. So this isn't anything that this is something we're promoting, the opportunity to have, but we would like the commission to have the buy-in in doing this work. Indian school markers. We're looking at school sites where not only the existing buildings still are present, but also sites where schools existed at one time. And part of the noting of that is we want to get those sites assigned GIS numbers so they can be protected, so that if someone's coming through with a pipeline, with a fiber optic line or something, that maybe we couldn't stop that work from happening, but we could hopefully have the conversation to mitigate any disturbance of the land where that school site was. And maybe have the opportunity to do some type of archaeology on that particular site. We know the site wouldn't be looking for human remains or anything like that, but still there would be some recollection of the activities that occurred on that site. Some bottles or some woodwork or something related to the building that was in that site itself. And again, we would like the commissioners to help us in finding that information out. I know Forrest has done a lot of research on the history of schools in North Carolina, and we would like to get as much of that documented. I know he's a wealth of information, and I think it's one of the things he brings to the commission that we're very thankful for, and would appreciate that involvement with the commission itself. Also, the reinterment of native human remains. This is a very important subject. It's something that Quinn and I felt very strongly about. We've taken it to our boss, who is our Deputy Secretary, is Tracy Burns. She took it to Secretary Wilson. They've shown their support for it. We've taken it to Greg Richardson with Indian Affairs and Secretary Caswell. But we're looking at the reinterment of human remains that are currently in the Office of State Archaeology, which is part of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And the bones have been studied. They've had all the work that their need for those bones to be actually out of the ground and in a secure location as they are currently. But we feel the bones need to be reinterred. And reinterred in a way that we could acknowledge their existence and recognition of the bones being reinterred, but a place where people could go and perform a ceremonial activity, a blessing, noting particular holidays, or like Indian Heritage Month or another Veterans Day, much like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, a place where people can go and show their respects for those individuals who may not be known as individuals or their tribal affiliations. There are bones that have been unearthed because of road construction, farming, building construction, and these are currently still being taken care of, but they need to be put to rest and let those spirits go where they may. And so our recommendation is to find a state-owned piece of property where they could be reinterred, where they can be protected, they can be secured, and that's one of the things that we would like the commission to endorse. I know Indian Affairs would like to take that to the Indian Affairs commissioners to get their buy-in and support of as well, their acknowledgement that they would feel that's a respectful and logical and respectful thing to do. And then we have our next topic, which is the Oral History Project. We've met with the oral historian here in the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. He's been very encouraging of us to do as much as possible to interview people in our tribal communities that would have knowledge about our tribal history. And not just our tribal history. When we think about the long-term history, you tend to think of things that happen 100 years ago. But we also need to acknowledge things that are our contemporary history. You know, what were our communities doing in the 60s when there were civil rights disruptions in the country? What was our role in our tribal communities? You know, was it that we simply sat on the wayside and minded our own business, or were we out there protesting and supporting others who were out there protesting civil rights? What were our experiences with voting? You know, I can speak to what was happening in Robeson County because I was there when we were having some of the issues with voting, double voting for our school board. Our judge candidate in Julian Pierce, and the fight there to get that candidate on the ballot. But just identifying, and we've started identifying those individuals that we think would be good, but we would need the tribes to look at and provide representation or knowledge of individuals who had significant knowledge of what was happening in their communities around some of these issues and other issues, because we were relying on the commissioners to bring ideas and individuals and other things forward for us to consider. Quinn and I want to be busy. We're already busy, but we want to make sure we're busier, and we want to make sure that the commissioners have things to do. And so we know that we're going to have a conversation about committees. We want working committees, and so that's all coming up as well. The American Indian History curriculum. And again, we're not trying to redo or trying to take over anything that any other entity's doing, whether it's the Commission on Indian Affairs, State Advisory Council on Indian Education, Indian Housing Authority. We're here in the Department of Natural Cultural Resources where there is a breadth of resources and places we need to connect and need to make sure American Indians are visible and taking a part of it. Things like the historical markers. The Arts Council is actually part of this department, so making sure that they're aware of our communities and that our communities are aware of them and the opportunities they have, that they can fund these. Some of the projects that we're talking about could be projects within your tribal communities that you could get funding for. I know Jennifer's here. I worked for Guilford Native under Ruth Revels, and she was a champion of arts and utilization of the North Carolina Arts Council. And just, you know, she would be, I hope she would be proud of the display down here because that was Ruth's work. But we want to work with the Carolina K-12 to develop some educational modules and lessons plans, because we know we get a lot of questions when November comes around. It's Indian Heritage Month, and teachers want to know, what can I teach in my classrooms? You know, give me some resources, some information. And we want to help provide some of that information to those school teachers and the community organizations. I know some of the youth groups, Boys and Girls Clubs, the Y, any after school programs with the church, any of those activities, promoting American Indians in an accurate, non-stereotypical kind of way. What do we want to put forward? And we want to be that conduit to make sure that accurate information about our American Indian population in North Carolina is presented. And with that, we have the North Carolina American Indian Leaders Booklet. We've made initial pass at some individuals we would like to highlight in this particular booklet. And we are very aware, very sensitive to the need to recognize individuals, tribal leaders within our communities, but we figured that the best and safest route for us to go initially would be looking at individual leaders who are no longer with us. So recognizing individuals like Chief W.R. Richardson, maybe Joel Bass from the Occaneechi community, Miss Erling Stacks from the Metro-Lina Native American Association, Mr. Eddie Jacobs from Cumberland County, and others like that. But we'd like the commissioners to take a look at the concept we have and either endorse that concept or provide us with more accurate names that they feel would be most, should be be included in this particular booklet. We were starting out basically with one individual from each tribal community, but if there's a need, I know we had a little bit of difficulty with Guilford Native because we were like, who do you pick, Ruth or Lonnie? So we said, well, that would be a case where we would include both because they were both equally important to that community and both equally made their mark on Indian affairs in that community. But those were some of the things that we have proposed. We hope the commission will endorse all of these projects and hopefully would come up with more projects for us to take on. Like I said, we're willing to do the work and we're willing to support you as you do the work for us. Because this is going to be a team effort. And so with that, the next item is, what ideas would you have for the American Indian Heritage Commission? So I'm going to turn it back over to Sandon for him to lead a conversation amongst the commissioners on ideas that they may have moving forward.
You want to stay at the mic because
Sure.
there's probably going to be a lot of Q&A here.
Sure.
Let's just open the floor and talk a little bit. We'll time box it if you'd like. I mean, I don't know what our time frame looks like here. We're at 11:20 is time check, so I know we've got other things on the agenda, so you want to spend the next 10, 15 looking at that? Is that good? Okay. I'll just open it up to ideas from the board here and just brainstorm a little bit and take these ideas and go from there. Is that all right with everyone?
So we're open to discussion to any of our ideas here that we're looking, any of our projects,
Or
correct?
questions about the project?
Any of those or anything else you'd like to propose us
So,
to look at?
something I'm thinking of from our logo standpoint, you think about us as Native Americans in the Southeast, our floral designs and the beautiful work there. So I think we as a commission should look at something from a floral design that we utilize here in the state of North Carolina that represents our states. You see a lot of our fancy lady dancers, you see a lot of our men, our traditional men, and different ones that represent and look at that. So I would entertain the thought of our commission to really discuss that and look at some type of floral design with the state of North Carolina incorporated in that. So, just get the wheels turning there, something of that nature there to accuracy, to accurately represent our native cultures here and in the state of North Carolina.
So you are you? I agree with what you were saying, but in a beadwork pattern. Because one of the things we were looking at was making sure that if someone saw our logo, they would know it was American Indian Heritage Commission. Because we've seen some logos for other organizations that if you saw the logo and the colors, you're saying like, what's that? If they didn't have their name on it, you wouldn't know what they were promoting. So. A good suggestion. I mean, I like that, and we can take that to the marketing marketing team as far as like we want beadwork with a floral pattern. Show us like 3 different options. Because what we'd have them do is we would have them prepare the logo, and then we would take it back to the commission and let you pick which one you like.
Okay.
Yeah, perhaps this is something that grows out of our committee discussion later, like one of our committees might be something with regards to public relations, you know what I mean? With this advertising, with the social media presence, with website presence, things like that.
And along those lines, I remember years ago with the Commission of Indian Affairs and in United Tribes with the commission of the Indian Heritage Month poster. I know initially, I think staff with the department was designing the poster and all. And we realized down the road that it was a good investment for our artists to give our statewide Native artists the opportunity and exposure. So not to take away from your talented folks in the artistic department, but that might be an opportunity for us by the very nature of our work to reach out to our local artists to assist with the design.
Great idea.
Kerry?
Yes, sir.
I had a couple thoughts on a couple of these ideas, and I think they're all good ones. But are we going to have the opportunity to discuss this as a commission then, these ideas that you brought forward?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I was thinking, for example, on the Indian school markers, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you, but in Robeson County alone, between the Civil War and 1972, there were over 90 Indian schools. And so we probably want to look at that a little more closely.
Okay. And the Indian school markers would be something that we would have to, we'd have to seek outside funding, probably foundation support, because they wouldn't fall under the historical marker division criteria. But unlike the tribal markers would fall under the historical marker division criteria.
Yeah, I've actually done a couple of these applications for the highway markers, and I've talked to Ansley. And I know that schools, they don't normally fund because there are just so many. The only one they said they might take a look at is the East Carolina Indian
Right.
School. But I think it's a great idea. It's just, working out the nuts and bolts of it.
Right.
Also, I'm not sure, but I think their deadline for applications for this next cycle is November the 1st.
1st or 15th? First, okay.
Yeah. So that. Yeah, so there, what I was going to say was there's really realistically no time to get anything in for this next deadline.
Along those lines, I'd just like to note, as a representative of an urban community, let's make sure that as we start out, that we remember that there are 4 urban communities with agencies and organizations, and although we represent over 30 different tribes in our service area alone in Guilford County and surrounding areas, the Kiawe and the Swara settled that area that we know today as the Piedmont. And I think that, regardless of whether we're talking about contemporary tribes or tribes that, we only read as historical, that they also be recognized.
I'd like to add to that, not to add to our list too much, but just in the work that I do every day at the museum and throughout my career, I think it's important that if in the future, not this next year or the following, but in the near future, if we could host some sort of symposium that centralizes those very things, our ancient ancestors, who we are as contemporary people, but really bringing together our history with our ancient past and our archaeology to make our storyline more fluid and button that up. There seems to be kind of a disconnect between our ancient ancestors and who Native people are today. And I think that we've kind of, briefly it's been mentioned, but would touch on and being able to offer explanation and have conversations around our much longer timeline and who we are, and really bring into conversation archaeology and ethics around archaeology, how to empower organizations to work with Native communities to help with archaeology that's in collections or sites that are under consideration.
And just to make I'll be right back. Just to not clarify, but add to, the Office of State Archaeology is doing a Archaeology Month conference next year focused on American Indians. And so they're open to having the conversation around what that conference could look like.
Very good.
And so I think that's really a powerful way to look at the past and the present and bridging the two between and determining what types of workshops they would like to offer during that time period. And then to go to Jennifer's point she raised, again, just something I had forgotten about was what we had a conversation about possibly doing markers in the future of our historically identified tribes. And we were having some conversation about, we didn't want to have anything that a non-recognized group could use to authenticate their existence as they made a petition for recognition today. So we were being very careful about how we did things like recognizing historical tribes that no longer exist today, that we didn't give breath to someone saying like, I'm of this tribe because I live here in this community. I want recognition now as a tribe because I've always been told I was of this tribe, and now you have a marker here, so I must be real. So any of those types of things. Kira.
So to build on that conversation, and then also specifically to your point, to build on that, I'd kind of like to offer some thoughts for the commissioners to think about as we're looking down this list of the projects that we have in mind, which are great. I think all of us have heard in so many ways, on posters, in songs, in dances, presentations, the theme, we are still here, we are still here. And you kind of have to ask, why do we have to keep saying that? Why do people, what is the gap in understanding that the general public is not quite grasping that? And so when you look at it, I think part of the conversations I've had with the North Carolina Museum of History about that celebration has been about, you know, all the Native people who've been on that board and talking about that celebration with the museum staff have said that a big part that is missing is that there doesn't seem to be anything on the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So the general public who knows nothing about Native people, or in North Carolina, is seeing, you know, what we would term traditional things, which are certainly part of our contemporary culture, and we should still continue to represent the traditional culture, but what they're not seeing is the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, Native people in suits, Native people going to Congress, Native people in all the fabulous jobs that you guys have. You know, we're not all artists. Some of us are, which is wonderful, but I think there needs to, you know, as we're talking about all of these things, especially like the curriculum and things like that, we need to maybe brainstorm and come up with ways to infuse more than the traditional. Yes, keep the traditional, but every time we put in only traditional or only regalia or only dancing or only traditional songs, that builds in people's minds the stereotypes and the misunderstandings and the leaving out of those gaps of who we really are sitting here as professional, educated people. So I think no matter what we do in all of these, somehow we need to make sure that however much energy we're putting into the traditional presentation of those things, we need to put just as much energy and front the contemporary. Just thinking we want to make that gap close.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what everyone has said here. For me, these topics are a little bit difficult because I know that there is a reckoning to be made for our Native people. I know that a lot of our history, our heritage, our origins, a lot of it is clouded in mystery. And that's because of many things that have been done or weren't done, for instance, of keeping records that the way that the colonial and state government should have done. So I don't know what to do with that. How we deal with that, you know, is that a topic of discussion? You know, if we're talking about American Indian history, and several people that spoke when we first started said to tell the real story or tell the truth. Well, what is the truth? The truth is that our lands were stolen and we don't have any record of it in many cases. So, you know, to me, that's kind of where I go. It's hard to tell our story when so much is clouded. So how do we come to a reckoning with that? You know, how do we deal with that? How do we reconcile that? You know, for African Americans, it's slavery. You know, of course, for Native people, it's slavery as well. So that's a topic. You know, American Indian slavery. You know, denial of American Indian history, American Indian identity. issues of race, you know, and Ms. Stewart just talked about the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Well, the truth is that for many of our Native communities, they would not allow us to identify as American Indian. So again, those are the things that I look at. I know that we want to promote tourism. We want to, and we should promote tourism. We should do things that are fun and interesting and all that stuff. But there's also a reckoning to be made in North Carolina. And so, you know, I don't know how we approach it or how we go forward with it. But those are some of the things that I think about, you know, and it really gets me upset when I think about it. Because I know that the struggle that a lot of our people have done to be authenticated as American Indian people. And a lot of it has to do with these things that we're talking about that I've just mentioned. Issues of race, issues of being able to prove to someone who you are. Those things have had an impact on our communities, you know. And so those are some of the things that I'm interested in. Again, I don't know how to move forward with it, what to do about it, or how to promote it, to show it, to share it. But those are some of the things that I'm interested in. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have some ideas that since we, you know, Dr. Marty, he was talking about had issues with the rejecting the American Indian, that we were killed off, and you know, like the early colonial, well, past colonialism did. They tried to eradicate the American Indian. Okay, let's keep that in our minds too. But you know, I feel like what would help alleviate a lot of the problem is exposure of American Indians all throughout the year. You know, not only during our powwows and November Indigenous Heritage Month, but if we increase our exposure that we are here, we show the public that we're here, we can contribute medicinal herbs. I know we got many people in our tribes that are experts on the power of herbs. The general public would love that because everything's gone up in the U.S. and the world today, the price-wise, and a lot of our medications are made directly from herbs. They have major constituent parts of herbs in them. So if we would, like, for example, some of our ceremonies, you know, some of our ceremonies are private for only our Indian people, but if, you know, some of our ceremonies are, you know, open to the public. So if we would advertise the importance of our ceremonies and what the purpose of the ceremony is to the general public, like through the newspaper, maybe TV, or through our mayors, the local mayors of our townships, you know, try to increase the exposure of the American Indian, of our tribes. I know I've had great success, you know, trying to expose, with the exposure of the Meherrin Indian tribe, with the Hereford County mayor's office and the local city government and all. We have been invited to a number of things. So I would just like to give this commission something to think about, you know, just exposure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. I appreciate what Commissioner Stewart said. You know, as most of you know, I've been working on a school project, and I think that, you know, everybody has a story to tell, and ours hasn't been told very well. I think that, you know, I went through the museum exhibits here recently, and I still really got the sense that if I didn't know anything about Indians, I'd say, well, Indians in North Carolina are pretty much a people of the past, you know, up until about 1940. And then it just sort of drops off. And what disturbs me is especially a lot of our own young people don't know our history. It's not being taught in schools. And maybe there are things that we don't want to talk about because they're difficult to talk about. The struggles that we had getting schools. I mean, in a time when the state was providing schools for African Americans and whites. Our people were struggling to build their own schools and pay the teachers, and that didn't change for a long time. And I just think that not only the public, but our own kids have a real fuzzy concept of what it was like to be an Indian in the early years of the 20th century. I mean, they don't know what the parents, the elders had to go through talking to these county officials, getting them to give permission to set up Indian schools. I mean, all of us, I think, know what our people went through doing that. And, you know, that's a story that needs to be told, not to hurt anybody's feelings, but just so that all these people will be aware of what happened, and so we don't repeat it again at any time in the future. You know, we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm just thankful that this commission's here now, that we can maybe try to set some things right that were a little bit off.
Well, thank everybody for their comments and ideas. This was all great. It's a great discussion. In the interest of time, I think this discussion can kind of roll right into the next thing on the agenda, which is formation of board committees, and, you know, under some of those things would fall into, some of these ideas would fall in the purviews of those committees. So, Curry, I don't know if you and I have talked about this. Have we talked about ideas for committees, or we want to let that grow organically from the group, or? Okay,
Well,
there you go. Slide, thank you.
These are just some ideas for proposed committees, but they're open for discussion or change. If you want to think about these committees and make firm decisions about them at the next meeting, feel free to do that.
I have some input that maybe a proposed committee on there should be tourism. That's one of my
Okay.
inputs.
It looks like maybe you could also combine history and research. I'm not sure what you had in mind for each of those separately, but that, maybe they could be folded in.
I was thinking as well, if you had tourism, maybe you could include marketing, maybe, just have those two, like tourism and marketing.
Would you roll something like public relations into that? Like we were talking about earlier with advertising, logos, internet presence, speaking with these media markets like Kerry was talking about earlier. Just a thought. Do we want to kind of have this discussion virtually over what committees we think would be appropriate, and then try to nail them down, like Kerry was saying, at the next meeting? Or would we want to leave this meeting with a concrete set of ideas? I think my personal opinion is that, you know, let this digest a little bit. We've all kind of been drinking from the fire hose a little bit. If that's.
Chairman, I recommend we take some soak time, think about committees, discuss some ideas from our tribes and things that they may be interested in as well, and some of our tribal leaders there that maybe want to see from this commission, and we may create some committees from that, and then through additional meetings or virtually or via communications, emails, various things of that nature there, we can bring this back to have a final set of committee boards, you know, at our next meeting here. But I think we should take some soak time and utilize that and get some input. As our chairman has spoken, we are drinking from fire hose just a little bit, and that's great. So we'll work through that. Okay.
In the interest of order here, I think we need to have a motion to establish the committees, be that with us doing this virtually, or, you know, taking this conversation offline or whatever, and that way we can have this discussion and then make a concrete decision on what we're going to be doing. So, JD, I think JD's comment was spot on there. How does the commission want to approach this? I mean, as far as, like I said, we drink it from the fire hose. Do we want to? take care of this today or take care of it later, so.
I thought JD just made a motion to,
Sorry, I was,
I thought JD just made a motion to hold.
okay. Was that did you make that motion or were you just making discussion?
I'll make that motion, sir, that we take.
Apologize for not hearing you. I
That's
was
the-
discussing with
understand.
Kerry.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we go back and we discuss with our tribal leaders, our affiliations there, and talk with our organizations on any ideas that they may have with regards to committees, and then we coordinate that and bring that back to our next meeting to have discussion and for final closure on the committees we want to go forward with.
I second that motion.
It's been seconded. Want to have discussion as far as like how we go about this coordination ideas here before we make final vote?
I have a few questions, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I'm guessing that our meetings they're quarterly?
Quarterly, yeah.
And, I guess for me, I would just really like to know a little bit more about organizational things, like for instance, we have committees, what kind of power does a committee have, how the committee brings back those recommendations to the full board on a quarterly basis, just how do we do our work, I guess if anyone knows that could answer that kind of question. Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I have one more comment. Although for me, I can go along with the whole group, but I will say that, all of us are very experienced people. We are in our communities. If we want, I can understand if we want to put it off. I know there's a lot of things to do, but, I always like to go ahead and get done what we can get done while we're here, because we're meeting every 3 months, and at least if we came out of this meeting with broad parameters of what the committees are, then that can kind of drive our thoughts going forward of what kind of projects or how we want to look at it. But again, I'll go along with everyone else. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, Dr. Richardson.
I concur with Dr. Richardson. I feel like if we aren't meeting again for 3 months, that's 3 months that we aren't getting the work done. Although I know as our inaugural meeting, we're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, but I do think, having served on the Commission of Indian Affairs Board and understanding the way they are set up as a government entity with subcommittees, I see it falling in line with that. If you guys are familiar with committee chairs on the commission, of course they have quite a number of different committees, Greg. So, but as far as these particular committees, I agree with Dr. Richardson. History and research should be combined. Education, arts, and tourism, public relations, and marketing. And I would assume that this body could determine if we needed to add more at some point in time as we get into our work. So I'm personally good with us, going ahead and establishing these committees.
So if we want to,
We do have a motion and a second on the floor.
that's what I was saying, so we could, if there's no further discussion, we can vote on that. If that vote doesn't pass, then we'll go forward with, and someone could propose that we do establish the committees today, go forward with establishing the broad parameters of the committees, and so let's let's go ahead and have this vote. I think I can sum up what we were talking about with this particular motion was by saying that the motion was on the floor to sort of postpone and do this virtually until the January meeting. Let's go ahead and hold a vote on that. All in favor? Yay.
Hey.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nays have it. So, I guess the next thing would be, let's move forward with our ideas on committees.
Mr. Chairman, is someone taking notes?
That'd be a great question, Mr. Hazel. Other than my chicken scratch, I'm not sure, sir.
It's being recorded.
It's being recorded. Yeah.
I make a motion that we vote on these committees that have been proposed today.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, so let's open the floor for discussion.
So, I don't know if this would fall under discussion since there's a motion and a second, but, so what are we saying? Are we saying combine history and research without fully talking out about what research is? Or, like, where are the museums? Like, does that fall under history? It shouldn't just fall under history. What, you know, what exactly are we talking about? This is why I kind of wanted to postpone. You know, so are we saying add tourism / marketing? What are we saying when you say vote on these as is, but we've already had some discussion about, oh, well, what do these mean? And do we add this and what add this? You know, so I think before we vote to accept these like they are, at least we need to have some, if we're not gonna postpone and process it and take it back to our communities and then maybe meet virtually in 2 weeks or 3 weeks to talk about it, then I think we need to hammer out more of what these committees actually are before we go forth and vote on this like this after we've already suggested changes to it.
Right. Mr. Hazel, is the motion on the floor to set some pretty broad parameters here of what these committees are? I'm just asking questions.
Well, you know, as was said earlier,
Or was that
we can add more committees in the future if we need them. You know, I guess I'm sort of like Marty. I'm a little hesitant to put things off unnecessarily, even if it means staying here a few minutes later today. Now, frankly, of course, I didn't come up with these. I'm not sure what the difference was in somebody's mind between history and research. Perhaps if Curry or Quinn could add something to that. I certainly think tourism and marketing is a good one.
I think when we talked about history, it was more like history, historical sites, physical buildings, research meaning like what's the information we have on our tribal communities. You know, what you're doing research on American Indian education experience in buildings, so that's research, but not necessarily historical sites. Physical. We were also looking at the legislation, and it said history, arts, customs, and culture. So those are 4 broad topics, but we're trying to make those topics into committees.
I have an idea. Should we take the goals list and match them with the committees? And then that would kind of give us more of a scope of work to understand what we're going about. Does that make sense?
And I do know that there is some discussion about doing a strategic planning session with the Heritage Commission sometime in the future. So that also will help lay the foundation for the work of the Heritage Commission. I know we're kind of putting the horse before the cart before the horse kind of thing right now, but I think it helps guide us at least till we get the wheels on the cart.
Mr. Chairman, given what Mr. Bird just said, if we're gonna have a planning session like that, then I could certainly wait until a planning session so we can hash these things out a little bit more. I could wait for that. So I'll just say that.
Mr. Chairman, if we are going to have a planning session between our meetings, and I'll go ahead and withdraw the motion, and we can have more discussion on it at a later date.
withdraw and then, or do we need to vote to withdraw it, or is he just gonna withdraw the motion? Help me out with the procedural part of this, and then we'll go forward with the next vote of setting up that actual planning session and, you know, nailing down a concrete date and trying to get things. Is that feasible? Mr. West's? Let's talk to our legal counsel real quick. If you come to the microphone, let's clarify a few things here. Make sure that we're above board. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Karen Blum. I'm Deputy General Counsel for the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. Just to help clarify a few things, I don't think you can have any deliberation outside of your open meeting. So whatever deliberation you have, in order to comply with state law, you would need to do here as a body and vote on it. What you could do, if you're not sure what committees you want to set up, you could vote on, you know, each person going back to their tribe and getting input. You could ask staff to look into it and come up with recommendations for your next meeting. But any deliberation that you do needs to be done in public, and then you would have a motion to consider X committee or to have staff look into it. A second, open for deliberation, then you can restate the question and take a vote. If that clarifies.
would a virtual session that's public apply to that, or would it have to be a public?
I think you could schedule a meeting to do that, but it would need to comply with the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I will also say that I was remiss. I didn't make the motion, I seconded it.
I noticed that right after I recognized you, I was like, that was Rebecca, sorry.
That's okay. So if it's the word of the commissioners and they would like more deliberation on this, I withdraw that motion.
Again, if we did a session that was, if there was a work session, it would not be we wouldn't be having the actual vote during that work session. It would be more of a ideal session, and then the vote would happen to establish the committees in our next public meeting, right?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe you can have a work session as a body to deliberate anything.
Gotcha.
If you would like to have more time to have staff look into it, they certainly could do that, but I think as a body, you would just need to vote on whether or not you need time to go back to your tribes for input, or whether or not you'd like to ask staff from the department to assist you in coming up with committees. You could do that, but I don't think you could deliberate or have a brainstorming session without having an open meeting and deliberating.
So, given the constraints of time and making use of the time that we have together, instead of boiling this ocean of all of these topics, could we move forward with perhaps addressing a couple of these, be that history and research, or arts, or PR and marketing? Some of the ideas that have been coming around, we would maybe entertain a motion to create Committee X, and, you know, elect the chairman for that committee and go forward, and then Committee Y, go forward. And maybe we're not addressing all these today, but we're addressing at least a couple of them, and getting the ball rolling so that we do have committees that are actually doing work. And this isn't our last meeting, it's our first one. And there will be more committees in the future. Is that, thoughts on that?
And what would those committees be?
That's a great question. So, in the interest of order, do you want to withdraw your motion? Yeah. Is that adequate, Madam Counsel?
I think the motion can be withdrawn, and then any other motion
Right.
would need to be restated.
Exactly.
And then seconded.
Exactly. Okay. To make sure.
Mr. Chairman, while she's up here, I have a question about the committee meetings themselves, though. That would be outside of this meeting, so would that be allowable as well to even have a committee meeting?
Like a virtual session or even an in-person session that's not public, understand? Yeah.
I believe the committee meetings are also subject to the Open Meetings Act because you have several members meeting, and then whatever recommendations they have will be brought to the commission as a whole to be voted on.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the legal counsel, what constitutes a quorum of the commission members?
A quorum?
Yes. How many members is required to establish a quorum?
I believe it's more than 50%.
More than 50? Okay. Thank you.
And I have another question. The committee meetings that you're saying also need to be public meetings. I think I heard you say to the chair that meetings can be arranged to be virtual and public, correct?
I believe so. I think legal would look into whether or not they're still allowing virtual meetings post-pandemic, because I think the executive order expired. And it was a little up in the air. I think that you can have virtual meetings.
Okay, and if that is the case, those meetings, whether it's committee meetings or an additional meeting of this commission, those don't have to wait to be every 3 months, correct? Like if we call it and put out public notice and it's public, it can still be held in the interim. It doesn't have to wait for each quarter meeting. Is that
I'm not
correct?
aware that you have a statute that limits the number of meetings. I think the statute just says you should meet at least this number of times. I think you can meet more often.
Okay, thank you. So we could have those meetings if the legal will get back to us on that.
Yeah.
If we can have them virtually, if we can have them in the interim and not just wait quarterly and make the quarterly the meeting of the whole commission,
Yeah.
then we could have those committee meetings, right? And then we could set a date for people getting back with the, both requesting the staff to look into matching these with the goals, and then also for, we could say, get back to us by October 30th with your suggestions for these and send them to the staff or something like that. And then we could meet in the interim if that's still allowed virtually.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying it could be done.
Mr. Chairman, so if I'm thinking that basically what we've talked about so far of a broad committees would be this list, the history, education, arts, research, and then also add something for tourism and marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah, PR, marketing.
PR
tourism,
and marketing.
Yeah.
I move that those are the committees that we initially adopt: history, education, arts, research, and PR, marketing, and tourism.
I second.
It's been moved
Excuse me,
second
Chairman.
by-
Mr. Chairman, legal counsel has not chosen to spoke yet about this, but my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order is that when a motion is made, it has to be recognized by the chair first and brought to the floor for the members to issue a second. I'm not trying to be hard or anything.
I understand.
I'm just trying to be correct.
Thank you.
know,
Thank you.
know.
Thank you. So it was moved, the motion was made by Dr. Richardson to accept these committees plus the Public Relations Marketing Committee as the initial committees for this board, correct, Dr. Richardson?
And tourism as well, tourism.
So with that, no, we'll talk about that in discussion. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Rebels Baxter. Let's open it up for discussion to, because that's one of the questions I had when we were going into that. We talked about some combination of these, and do we want to come up with an official name for that other committee, or just say, hey, this is the PR, marketing, whatever? Tourism. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just was clarifying for my small brain, that's all. More discussion? Mr. Hazel, you're itching?
Yeah. Mr. Mr. Chairman, I just mentioned that several years ago at one of the Unity conferences, we had a workshop on tourism in Indian country, and some good ideas came out. I think Miss Nora worked on it, and but it never really went anywhere. And I think it's important, but I hope we can figure out a way to keep it going this time too, and not just get an idea, but then it just kind of drops.
Okay. Any further discussion, or should we go ahead with the vote on these committees, and then we'll talk about who the chairs of these committees are?
Might I add, Chairman, if we wanted to go ahead and align the goals with these committees, so we could have for history, tribal historic markers and Indian school markers. For education, American Indian history curriculum and Native American leaders. For research, reinterment of human remains and oral history. For arts, the American Indian Heritage Celebration at the North Carolina History Museum. And then the scope of work or the goals that are on our agenda, we would have to figure out for marketing and tourism, exactly what that would be. Marketing, tourism, and PR.
That could be, Mr. Chairman, that could be the website,
Yeah.
Yes.
website,
Okay.
Facebook, logo.
Public facing stuff.
Yes.
So the only thing about going ahead and doing that, I love the way you match those to the goals, but for instance, I had a suggestion to change the name for this American Indian history curriculum, because if you notice, fortunately, we're not just talking about history, we're talking about the contemporary life experiences. So, for that particular goal, I would actually suggest changing the name to reflect what that actually is. It's not just history.
Sure.
So I would maybe take that out and rename it, and we haven't talked about that yet, in order to vote on the name as it is into a committee. And then the other thing goes back to what I was saying before. Is it just up to each committee how they integrate contemporary culture? Because we are charged with preserving Indian culture, which is also contemporary. So is it up to each committee to make sure that that is integrated into that? Is that a separate committee?
I think to me, that's a cross-cutting concern, right? Of,
Yeah.
something that each committee would be taking into account when they're sort of deliberating their own work. Just my thought. Any further discussion to establish these committees?
Just a little input. I do look at historical markers as a tourism part. I mean, not to confuse anybody or start back over. That's just my little input on that. That's what I look at also as part of tourism, is those markers.
And I think the committees will be somewhat overlapping, probably all of them, actually.
If there's no further discussion, then the motion on the floor is to establish these 5 committees as listed on that slide, plus the PR, marketing, what'd you call it? Tourism committee as well. If there's no further discussion, let's go with a vote. All in favor, yay? Aye. Opposed? Yeas have it. These 5 committees will be established. Madam Council, should we go ahead and just move forward with trying to entertain motions on the chairs of these committees? Does the board think that's a good idea? To go ahead and just get these boards chaired, and then they can grow organically from there from the board. So for each individual committee, we should take a motion for each individual committee as far as the chair for it, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that if you're going to populate the committees today, then you would need a motion and nominations for people to be on certain committees, a second, and debates, and then a vote.
Okay.
But you're not obligated to do it today.
Okay. But there's no time like the present, right? So are we looking at time? You guys aren't ready to eat for another, we got 6 minutes. Can we roll through this in 6 minutes?
Yeah.
Ready? This is your board, so motions for these committees. To start with the history committee, and we'll work our way down.
We're looking for nominations for chair, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Forrest Hazel for the History Committee.
I second that.
Discussion? So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Hazel, as the chair of the history committee, is on the table. Any opposition? All in favor? Yay. Mr. Hazel, congratulations, I think. So next one, education, is that right, Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Is that on your list?
Mhm.
Would you say education?
Yes, ma'am.
I nominate Nancy Strickler. Be sure to accept.
That's second.
I think it's great with her working at the university, it's the only person I could think of.
So moved and seconded for Ms. Strickland Fields as the education chair. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Fields.
Thank you.
Arts, is that the next one? Arts Committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Jennifer Revels Baxter.
I second that nomination, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded for Ms. Baxter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving right along. Research.
Could you define that, please?
Good question, sir.
A little bit more than just.
You got the most notes, so you gotta do.
I was looking over at Curry. I think that would entail meeting with the North Carolina Department of Archaeology, UNC Chapel Hill, to understand inventories of ancestors' human remains, identifying a localized place within the state of North Carolina to return those ancestors, and the ceremonies that would be associated with that, and also public access, as well as the ethics surrounding that process and any ongoing collections and archives that possess human remains, and how to initiate those conversations to continue the work.
I nominate Dr. Marty Richardson.
I second that nomination.
It's moved for Dr. Richardson and seconded. Any other nominations? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did you raise your hand? Did you raise your hand in opposition?
No.
I was just joking. Dr. Richardson, Chair of the Research Committee. The last one was PR, Marketing, Tourism.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Commissioner Rebecca LeClaire for our Tourism/Public Relations Marketing Chair.
I second that.
So been moved and seconded for Ms. LeClaire. Any other nominations? I should have said that for all of them. I'm sorry about that. Just in the interest of procedure. My bad. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
So saying aye. Opposed? That was efficient. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. I'm gonna do something kind of selfish here and propose this to Kerry. I don't know if we've talked about this or not. We don't have any meetings other than any minutes for this, other than the recording. Should we move forward with nominating a secretary, or is that something that is in the bylaws of this? Are there bylaws for this committee or whatever? Or should we just sort of draft someone at least for the next meeting, so that we do have recorded minutes of these meetings? Because nobody wants to read my handwriting, and I mean, I could, of course I'm gonna type it, I mean.
Mr. Chairman, I think other commissions, when they record and don't have somebody transcribing minutes, will have staff, which is here to support you, transcribe or take meeting minutes, and then present them to the commission for adoption at the next meeting.
Sounds great.
That is one way that you could do it if you so choose.
Okay. We could probably move forward with that at least for the next meeting, and then things like vice chair will come up at the next meeting, secretary probably, things like that. So keep those in mind as we move forward. Is that a fair assumption? Fair, something for you guys to keep in mind for the next meeting? We have the chairs of the committees. I guess, will these committees grow organically from this group, or chairs you're gonna reach out to folks to try to establish who the members of the committees are? Are we talking about size of committees? Do we want to discuss that here?
You bring up a good question, because there are only a small amount of us. So, you know, the committees, do they have to be made up of other members, or can we have other folks that we draft to? How would that work?
You mean like community
If
people?
for my committee, for example, do I need to find someone else on the commission that wants to serve with me to meet with, or do we identify other people in the state that could be on the committee? You see what I'm trying to say?
Expertise in those fields.
Yeah, I mean, how does that work? Or does it have to be just commission members?
Madam Council.
Because then we're gonna all be on the committee, every committee, pretty much.
Just one big board meeting, yeah. Madam Council.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure, not positively sure, but other commissions have only had committee members from the body itself.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I mean, we could look into it in the future, but as a starting point, I would recommend sticking with commission members.
So how do we want to go about populating these committees? Do you guys want to sort of voluntold folks who you have in mind on the board, or we want to vote on these committee members now, or do we want them to grow organically? How do these committees grow? This is first rodeo at,
Might I make a recommendation?
You may.
Should we prioritize these goals and then work together? As someone said, you know, to work overlapping.
Exactly.
And so we could prioritize maybe for this year, whatever our cycle year is, and then we could all share our efforts. And since we have to do most of this work in these types of sessions, then we could understand whatever priority 1, 2, 3 is for this year, how to best utilize our own resources among us. Could that be a strategy?
I would also like to maybe even charge the staff to maybe even look into that some more about, can we have ad hoc people on this committee? Because as a commissioner for the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs, that's allowed. So we do have ad hoc people on those committees that we serve. So if we could get clarification on that and charge the staff with that information and get clarification, because I would hate to have to limit what we do because we don't have enough people on the committees.
Yeah.
I'm a workhorse, so I like to move fast and forward. So if that is a possibility, I would like to do that first.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Quinn.
And then from my understanding, if they got back to us after this meeting, there's nothing that can be decided via email. Is that correct? It's not like somebody can say, oh, Rebecca, I'd like to be on your committee. We can't discuss none of that via email. Is that correct?
So these committees are established now. They can't be populated until the January meeting. Is that what I'm hearing? Right.
Unless we
unless we volunteer now.
I'd like to work on the education
Most-
committee.
To populate these committees, Madam Council, do we need motions on the floor to put the members in those committees, or do they just? They volunteer, right? There's no need for committee size, things like that. Do we need to vote on those, or like from this body, would there be like, for instance, each committee has 3 people or 5 people or whatever?
I think you could take nominations, but you've already elected chairs, and what I'm not sure of is if you can just have the chair populate.
Yeah, that was
Each-
my question.
I think staff could look into that for your next meeting.
If they could look at it before the next meeting, then I guess we could probably populate the committees. If it was allowable, we could populate the committees virtually. You know, if they came back and said, yeah, go for it, populate your committees, then we could do that virtually, right? Via email. Versus if we had to do it at a meeting, then we gotta wait till January or call a meeting between.
I think we could have a response to you before the next meeting. I'm happy to work with staff
Yeah.
to figure that out.
That'd be great, if we knew within the next couple of weeks, if that's what we could do. If, let's just say that staff comes back and says, yeah, go for it, then we go for it, right?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I had thought that perhaps, I mean, I'm open to anything, but if, like Commissioner Stewart volunteered to be on the Education Committee, if we couldn't, I mean, if we want in this, for the sake of time,
Yeah.
if we know what we want to work on now, if we just volunteer
Yeah.
for each of them, and then sort of, can we do a blanket approval of all of the committee?
Yeah, that was my question, was can we just, do we need to actually have a motion to populate the committees, or do we just volunteer? And it sounds like, from what Ms. Baxter was saying, as far as like the commission and things, it's just a volunteer basis, right? The chairs have been elected via motion, so it's just like, hey, I want to be on the research committee, get me in there, you know?
Chairman, I mean, my experience with the Robert's rules and all, once you establish a chair, then it's the chair of the committee, then it's that chair's responsibility for, to set the rules for each individual committee.
Okay, that was the question I was getting around to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'd like to suggest that, I know we want to move quickly and we're all anxious to get things going and implement some work here, but that we also give things some breath, and to Commissioner Stewart's point, understand what the work is. And so perhaps at our next meeting, the agenda could be focused on what are the action items that are associated with each of these goals, and really understand what work we're going about, how we can all best fill in these committee roles, and then move forward with what that work actually is. I don't think that this commission is gonna be in existence time immemorial, and so we can really do some really smart, effective work, just really strategizing on how to move forward.
So chairs populate your committees, and then the next meeting, we'll have committee reports that tell us basically what you guys have been talking about, what projects you've been taking on as far as like for advisement with.
Well, I think what I'm saying is to have the next meeting really be centered around the conversation of what do these, what are the tribal historic mark, what are we gonna work on?
Exactly, yeah, that's what I was getting
We
at.
can't have those conversations outside of this space, correct? Okay, so this is the working format environment for us.
I would suggest in addition, Dr. Richardson had a question about what exactly is the process of our work, so we don't even have that hammered out yet, let alone the content of the work. So I think at the next meeting, it'll be, answering all of those things, talking through all of those things, as well as what is the content of these things, what does that mean, what does it look like on the ground, and then do these, are these, where would it fall under the committees that have been approved today?
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman, because the committee members, we need to understand exactly, what can we do and not do to accomplish these, the goals that were set forth before us for these separate committees. And you know, since we only have 8 members, I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3,
12.
4, 12, okay, 12. We got like, what, 5 committees? How many people is gonna be required for each committee? At least, or could we all just work on each committee?
I think that's what Ms. LeClaire was talking about, was, you know, getting that clarity from council as far as like, there would be a core of the committee that is from this board, and then can we reach out to community members to say, you know, we want your involvement and input as someone with expertise in this particular field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, as they do on the Commission of Indian Affairs, so.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that we should all be cognizant of too is that we have 12 communities too, you know, and so, you know, what my tribe is interested in or wants to go along with, you know, it might not be with everyone else. So those are some things that we need to worry about, because I mean, even for me, you know, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with what's been proposed with the remains, to be honest. So I just put that out there. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could we have like a virtual meeting once the staff gets back to us with the information that we've requested?
Yeah, I think once we get the information, we could make a decision on could we have such a meeting to discuss those things.
Because depending on what they say is depending on if we can have a virtual meeting,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly. Otherwise, it's all tabled until January.
Right, right.
Right. All hearts and minds clear?
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Off the record, if there is that much.
Yeah, those are things
Okay,
off the
okay.
record until the meeting's adjourned, so you probably can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would.
This is record.
Excuse me.
Now you got me interested, but anyway. Any more discussion on these topics for
I
the?
mean, I'm okay with waiting to hear what the staff has to tell us.
Okay.
And moving forward that way.
I think that's a wise decision. So we make sure we're doing everything above board, right? If we don't have any further topics for discussion, I'm gonna ask, Mr. Jacobs, if you would give us closing prayer.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll-
Heavenly Father, we thank you for what has occurred here today. It's certainly a historic moment, and you were in the midst, dear God, as we go our separate ways. May we keep in mind the population that we serve and good for all mankind, and get ourselves out of the way as you have for all of us that you've created a salvation plan for. Dear God, I pray for the safety of the different commissioners here. And I thank you for all that has happened here today, and it's in the name of Jesus Christ that I do pray. Amen.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting if somebody would so move. Ben moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. If there's no opposition, meeting is adjourned at 12:27 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Let's get to work. That's a great question. Probably Mr. Godwin.
Okay.